The Valkyrie Collective's assault on Outpost Helix 9 had been devastating. Commander Torek Vess stared at the tactical display, watching as the last remnants of the Coalition's defensive line crumbled under the relentless bombardment. 3 months of siege had reduced the once thriving colony to rubble, and their supplies were critically low. The orbital platforms had fallen 2 weeks ago, cutting off any hope of reinforcement or evacuation. "Sir, we've lost contact with Delta Quadrant," Lieutenant Draver reported, her 4-fingered hand trembling slightly as she adjusted her headset. The reptilian officer's normally vibrant scales had dulled to an ashen grey from exhaustion. "The civilian bunkers they're gone." Vess closed his inner eyelids, allowing himself a moment of grief. Another 5,000 souls lost. The Coalition had united 17 sentient species across 3 spiral arms, but the Valkyrie, with their hive-mind consciousness and biological technology, had systematically dismantled their defenses planet by planet. "The Valkyrie commander is requesting our surrender again," Fleet Captain Morrick said, his voice resonating from the communication implant embedded in his thorax. The insectoid officer had lost 2 of his limbs during the initial assault. "They're offering terms." "The same terms they offered Proxima Colony?" Vess asked bitterly. "Complete neural integration into their collective? I'd rather die fighting." The bunker's lights flickered as another barrage hit somewhere above. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, coating the assembled officers, the last leadership of what had once been a prosperous outpost, housing over 3 million colonists from across. "The Coalition. What about the message we received from Coalition Command?" asked Major Alexis, the towering amphibian strategist whose people had been among the first to fall to the Valkyrie. "The one about reinforcements?" Vess laughed hollowly. "What reinforcements?" "Major, we've lost contact with half the Coalition worlds. Who would be coming to save us now?" The warning klaxons suddenly blared, and the tactical display erupted with new data points. Multiple hyperspatial rifts forming, Draver shouted, her scales flushing with color. "Count 37 distinct signatures. They're not Valkyrie." "Configuration." Vess felt a flutter of hope quickly suppressed. "Coalition reinforcements?" "No, sir. These signatures don't match any known Coalition drive patterns. They're—" "Wait." Draver's voice trailed off as she stared at her readings in disbelief. "Sir, they're from Earth." A stunned silence fell over the command center. Earth was a relatively new addition to the Coalition, a volatile, water-rich world whose inhabitants had only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century. The humans were considered primitive by most Coalition standards, still prone to internal conflicts and possessing relatively unsophisticated technology. They had contributed a few diplomatic missions and scientific experts, but militarily they were insignificant humans. Morrick's antennae twitched in confusion. What could they possibly— The bunker shook violently as something massive impacted the surface directly above them. The tactical display showed objects, drop pods by the look of them, tearing through the Valkyrie blockade at impossible speeds, their heat signatures blazing across the planet's stratosphere. "We're receiving a transmission," Draver said, patching it through to the main communication array. A gruff, staccato voice filled the command center. "This is Colonel Oxen Blackwood of Earth's Celestial Assault Division. We understand you have a pest problem. Hold position. We're coming in hot." The tactical display updated again, showing the first wave of pods hitting the surface. Within seconds, the Valkyrie perimeter alarms were blaring. For the first time in months, Vess saw Valkyrie units in retreat. "What in the void?" Alexis whispered, watching the display as tiny blips, individual soldiers, moved with impossible speed and coordination through the Valkyrie lines. Earth had arrived, and they had brought their warriors. The command center of Outpost Helix 9 had become a maelstrom of activity as coalition officers struggled to process what they were witnessing. The tactical displays showed Earth's forces engaging the Valkyrie, across multiple fronts and winning. How is this possible? Major Alexis demanded, his webbed hands spreading in confusion as he watched the holographic representation of the battlefield. Each of these humans is moving like a full tactical squad. Commander Vess had no answer. The humans were deploying technology the Coalition had never seen before. Armor that seemed to absorb Valkyrie bioenergy weapons, handheld weapons that bypassed the collective's neural defenses, and most shockingly, combat tactics that seemed to anticipate the Valkyrie's hive mind coordination. Incoming transmission from the human commander, Lieutenant Draver announced. Visual feed available. Put it through, Vess ordered. The central holographic display shifted to show a human female with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. She wore a form-fitting combat suit of matte black material lined with glowing blue circuitry. What caught Vess's attention was her eyes, cold, calculating, and utterly fearless. Commander Vess, I'm Admiral Kira Wolf, Earth Defense Command. Her voice was level, despite the sounds of combat audible in the background. Colonel Blackwood is leading the ground assault, while I coordinate the orbital engagement. We've broken through the Valkyrie blockade and established air superiority in 3 sectors. Admiral, Vess said, struggling to maintain his composure. Your intervention is unexpected. We were unaware Earth possessed this level of military capability. A thin smile crossed Wolf's face. We don't advertise it. Coalition diplomats were interested in our art, philosophy, and scientific theories, not our war history. That suited us fine. But when we learned what was happening here, her expression hardened. Humanity has a long memory for those who stand with us when it matters. The transmission briefly destabilized as an explosion detonated somewhere near the Admiral's position. When it cleared, she appeared completely unfazed. We've analyzed the Valkyrie Collective's neural patterns, she continued. Their hive mind is their strength, but also their critical weakness. Our Psi-Core units are deploying countermeasures now. On the tactical display, the Coalition officers watched in astonishment as entire Valkyrie battalions suddenly fell into disarray, their coordinated movements becoming chaotic and confused. Your people can disrupt their neural network? Fleet Captain Morick asked incredulously. Our best scientists have tried for years. Earth has unique experiences with psychic warfare, Wolf replied, her expression unreadable. Now, I need your people to coordinate with ours. We've got 28 minutes before the Valkyrie adaptation protocols kick in. As if on cue, a human soldier entered the command bunker, accompanied by 2 others carrying crates of equipment. The lead soldier removed his helmet, revealing a face covered in intricate scarification that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. Commander Vess? The man nodded respectfully. Lieutenant Tiger Frost, Earth Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. We've brought neural shielding for your command staff and tactical uplinks to coordinate with our forces. As Frost's team distributed the equipment, Vess watched the tactical display with newfound hope. The Valkyrie had been pushed back from 3 sectors already, and Earth dropships were evacuating civilians from areas previously thought lost. I don't understand, Draver said quietly, as she accepted a neural shield from one of the humans. Why would Earth commit such resources to a remote outpost? We're not even a strategic location. Lieutenant Frost overheard her. 3 years ago, When that plague hit Earth's colony on Titan, Helix 9 was the first to send medical supplies and volunteer doctors. His eyes met Draver's. Humanity doesn't forget its debts, ever. On the tactical display, a new wave of Earth vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Larger ships this time, bristling with weapons that immediately began systematically dismantling the Valkyrie fleet. "The tide is turning," Vess whispered, watching, as the seemingly invincible enemy that had terrorized them for months began to fall back. Dawn broke over the eastern quadrant of Helix 9, illuminating a landscape transformed by war. Valkyrie bioorganic structures still clung to parts of the city, pulsing with sickly light, but they were in retreat. Earth's forces had established forward operating bases at strategic points throughout the colony, their distinctive black and blue banners fluttering in the acrid wind. Commander Vess stood atop what remained of the colony's central administrative tower, watching as Earth's combat engineers deployed technology that actively disintegrated Valkyrie biological structures. Beside him, Admiral Wolf observed the operation through enhanced optics built into her retinal implants. "Your people fight like nothing I've ever seen," Vess admitted. "It's as if each soldier is a specialized combat unit unto themselves." Wolf lowered her optics. "That's because they are. Every soldier in Earth's Celestial Assault Division is a volunteer who has undergone extensive genetic, cybernetic, and neurological enhancement." "Your species allows such modification?" Major Alexis asked, his amphibian features registering shock. Most coalition species had strict taboos against biological alteration. One reason the Valkyrie, with their complete biological integration, were viewed with such horror. "Allows it? We embraced it," Wolf replied. "Earth's history is written in blood, Commander. We spent millennia fighting each other before we united. When we reached the stars, we swore never to be vulnerable again." She gestured to a squad moving through the ruins below. Even from this distance, Vess could see the inhuman grace and speed with which they moved. "The Vanir units you see there have reinforced skeletal structures and enhanced musculature. The Hyperion teams have neural processors that allow them to process battlefield information at 300 times normal speed. Our Lazarus squads have regenerative capabilities that let them survive injuries that would kill most sentients." Vess felt a chill. The Coalition had welcomed humans as diplomatic partners, viewing them as an enthusiastic but relatively primitive species. The humans had never corrected this misperception. "And the Valkyrie?" he asked. "A formidable enemy," Wolf acknowledged, "but ultimately predictable. Their hive mind makes them exceptional at coordination, but slow to adapt to novel threats. Earth has been preparing for enemies like them since we first looked to the stars." A series of explosions rippled across the Western District as Earth's forces triggered the collapse of a major Valkyrie nerve center. The Coalition tactical officers winced at the destruction, but Wolf didn't blink. "Lieutenant Frost tells me, you've been defending this colony for 3 months," she said. "Your people showed remarkable courage." "We were dying slowly," Vess admitted. "Another week and there would have been nothing left to save." Wolf's communication implant pulsed, and she touched it lightly. "Blackwood's team has secured the primary Valkyrie relay node. They've captured intact data streams that should give the location of 3 more hive ships. Below them, a squad of humans escorted a group of freed Coalition civilians toward a medical station. The refugees moved with the shuffling gait of the traumatized, but their faces showed the first hints of hope Vess had seen in months. "We've received word from Coalition Central Command," Fleet Captain Morik reported, approaching with a data pad. "They're expressing surprise at Earth's intervention and requesting information about your military capabilities." A cold smile. touched Wolf's lips. Tell them Earth stands with its allies. As for our capabilities, they're welcome to send observers to the next engagement. Next engagement? Vess asked. Wolf's gaze shifted to the sky, where Earth battlecruisers were now visible in low orbit, their silhouettes stark against the morning light. The Valkyrie made a critical error when they attacked this colony, she said. They revealed themselves as an existential threat. Humanity doesn't tolerate existential threats. One of Wolf's officers approached, his face half mechanical with a glowing red optical implant. Admiral, we've decoded the Valkyrie command signals. We can trace them back to their primary hive cluster. Strike teams are prepped for deployment. Wolf nodded. Initiate Operation Hellstorm. She turned to Vess. Commander, your colony is secure. Earth forces will remain to assist with reconstruction and defense. But we're taking the fight to the enemy now. As if to punctuate her words, a massive Earth dreadnought emerged from hyperspace directly above them, its hull emblazoned with the words, "Remember Titan," in bold letters. The Valkyrie thought the coalition would fall easily, Wolf said, watching as dropships began launching from the dreadnought. They never counted on humanity entering the war. That will be their final mistake. The Coalition High Command conference chamber fell silent as Admiral Wolf concluded her briefing. The assembled representatives, 17 species from across known space, stared at the tactical projections with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to cautious hope. "You're telling us," began Archon Tekla, the crystalline leader of the Forian conclave, her facets refracting light as she spoke, "that Earth forces have not only secured Helix 9, but have successfully launched counter-offensives against 7 major Valkyrie strongholds?" "Correct," Wolf replied, standing calm and composed before the Coalition's highest authority. Commander Vess watched from the side, still processing the events of the past 2 weeks. The Valkyrie Central Command structure has been severely compromised. Their hive ships at Proxima, Deneb, and the Cygnus Reach have been neutralized. "Impossible," muttered the Kelsani representative, his tendrils writhing in agitation. "My homeworld fell to the Valkyrie in less than a month, despite our most advanced defenses. How could humans possibly—" "Perhaps," interrupted Morik, who had accompanied Vess to this emergency session, "we should listen to what humanity has been trying to tell us since they joined the Coalition." All eyes turned to the insectoid captain, who had gained new respect for Earth's capabilities after witnessing their efforts firsthand. The Valkyrie's strength lies in biological adaptation and neural coordination, Wolf continued, activating a new holographic display. Earth's Psi-Core has developed targeted disruption fields that fragment their collective consciousness. Meanwhile, our Chimera units have deployed bio-counter-agents that attack their biological technology. The display showed footage of Earth soldiers, their armor now reconfigured with organic components, engaging Valkyrie forces. Where the Valkyrie's biological weapons had once melted through Coalition defenses, they now seemed ineffective against the adapted human armor. "Humans are exceptionally adaptable," Wolf stated, "both technologically and psychologically. War is unfortunately something we understand intimately." Vess stepped forward. "I've witnessed their capabilities myself. The Valkyrie had us outmatched in every way until Earth arrived. Now the enemy is in retreat across all fronts." The chamber erupted in discussion, voices overlapping as the Coalition leaders debated this unexpected turn of events. Through it all, Admiral Wolf stood patiently, her silver hair gleaming under the chamber lights. Finally, High Counselor Narim of the Vedic commonality raised a hand for silence. "Admiral Wolf, while we are grateful for Earth's intervention, we find ourselves concerned." Your species concealed significant military capabilities from the coalition. Some might consider this a breach of trust. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Vess held his breath, watching Wolf carefully. "Counselor," she replied evenly, "Earth joined the coalition as a partner in scientific, cultural, and economic exchange. We disclosed our defensive capabilities as required by treaty. Our specialized combat divisions and adaptive warfare technologies weren't deliberately concealed. They simply weren't relevant to peaceful cooperation." "And now?" Narim pressed. "Now they're very relevant," Wolf said, her voice hardening slightly. "The Valkyrie threat demands a response they aren't prepared for. Humanity is providing that response." Lieutenant Tiger Frost entered the chamber, approaching Wolf with urgent purpose. The neural scarification on his face pulsed more intensely than Vess had seen before. "Admiral," Frost said quietly, though his voice carried in the silent chamber, "the Revenant Division has completed their infiltration of the Valkyrie central node. Project Prometheus is ready for implementation." A subtle change came over Wolf's expression, something cold and resolute that made several coalition representatives shift uncomfortably. "What is Project Prometheus?" Archon Tekla demanded. "A targeted strike at the heart of the Valkyrie collective," Wolf answered. "Our forces have located their primary consciousness hub, the nexus that coordinates their entire species. We've developed a method to neutralize it permanently." "You mean destroy their entire species?" gasped the Kelsani representative. "No," Wolf corrected. "We will sever their hive connection and force them into individual consciousness. Earth believes in proportional response. We don't practice extinction." The implications hung heavy in the air. To individualize the Valkyrie would fundamentally transform them as a species, ending the threat they posed, but forever changing what they were. "You developed this capability in mere weeks?" Narim asked incredulously. "We developed it years ago," Wolf replied, "against the possibility of encountering hostile hive intelligences. Humanity plans for contingencies, Counselor." The silence that followed was profound. The coalition leaders were finally beginning to understand what kind of ally they had in Earth, and perhaps wondering what kind of enemy humanity might have been. "The operation begins in 6 hours, Wolf stated. "I'm here as a courtesy to inform the coalition, not to request permission." The observation deck of the EDS Thermopylae provided a panoramic view of the Valkyrie homeworld, a massive gas giant, with swirling bands of crimson and gold, orbited by 7 moons. On the 3rd moon, barely visible from this distance, sat the central node of the Valkyrie collective consciousness, a sprawling biological structure that pulsed with ominous light. "Commander." Vess stood beside Colonel Blackwood, watching as Earth's specialized forces made final preparations. The Colonel's armor had been modified since Helix 9, now featuring organic components that mimicked Valkyrie biological technology. "Your people have accomplished in 3 weeks what the Coalition couldn't manage in 2 years of war," Vess said. Quietly, Blackwood's weathered face remained impassive. "Humanity has been preparing for this moment since before we joined your Coalition, Commander. Not this specific enemy, perhaps, but something like them." "Why?" Vess asked. "Your solar system was never threatened before you joined interstellar society." "Because we've nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times," Blackwood replied. "Nuclear war, climate collapse, biological weapons. After our final global conflict 2 centuries ago, we swore to never again be unprepared for existential threats, whether they came from within or without. On the tactical displays surrounding them, Earth vessels moved into position around the Valkyrie moons. Each ship carried specialized troops and equipment designed specifically to counter the Valkyrie's unique biology and neural network. Admiral Wolf entered the observation deck, accompanied by Lieutenant Frost and a woman Vess hadn't met before. Tall and lean, with intricate mathematical equations tattooed across her exposed skin. "Commander Vess," Wolf nodded in greeting. "May I introduce Dr. Inara Khatri, head of Project Prometheus." Khatri's eyes were unnaturally bright. Another human. Modification, Vess assumed. "The neural disruption matrix is calibrated," she reported. "Once deployed, it will cascade through their entire collective, severing the connections that bind their consciousness while preserving individual neural function." "You're certain this won't kill them?" Vess asked. "We designed it specifically to avoid that outcome," Khatri assured him. "Each Valkyrie will survive as an individual being capable of independent thought and choice. Their biological technology will become inert but can be repurposed. They will have a chance to evolve as separate entities rather than parts of a predatory whole." Wolf checked the chronometer embedded in her wrist. "Strike teams are in position. Phantom squads have already infiltrated the outer defenses. We move in 3 minutes." Across the Valkyrie system, Earth ships shifted from stealth mode to active combat configuration. The Valkyrie defenses, which had been dormant, unaware of the human fleet's presence, suddenly flared to life. "They've detected us," Frost reported, his scarification glowing brightly. "Psi-Core teams report massive neural activity in the collective. They're mobilizing everything they have." "As expected," Wolf said calmly. "Initiate Phase 1. On the tactical display, Specialized Earth. Strike teams began their assault on key points across the Valkyrie moon. Unlike conventional military operations, these teams moved with surgical precision, targeting neural nodes and biological relays while avoiding population centers. Coalition forces reported that the Valkyrie have no concept of surrender, Vessi observed. "They fight to the last drone." "That's because they've never faced an enemy they truly feared," Blackwood replied. "Until now." The battle unfolded with methodical efficiency. Earth forces suffered casualties, but the operation proceeded exactly as planned. Within an hour, Earth's specialized units had secured the primary access points to the central node. "Dr. Khatri," Wolf said, "you may proceed." Khatri activated a sequence on her neural interface. Across the Valkyrie moon, human operators initiated the Prometheus protocol, a cascading disruption that targeted the synaptic connections between Valkyrie individuals and their collective consciousness. The effect was immediate and visible even from orbit. The pulsing biological structures flickered, their rhythm disrupted. The coordinated defense of the Valkyrie forces suddenly became chaotic as millions of minds simultaneously experienced individuality. For the first time, "Neural separation complete," Khatri announced. "Collective dissolution at 97% and holding. The Valkyrie hive mind has been successfully dismantled." On the tactical displays, Valkyrie ships drifted aimlessly or powered down. Ground forces fell into confusion, many simply stopping where they stood. "And just like that," Vess whispered, "the war is over." "No," Wolf corrected him. "Now the harder part begins. Helping an entire species learn to exist as individuals rather than parts of a whole. Earth has committed resources to this transition." The observation deck fell silent as they watched the Valkyrie homeworld. What had been the center of an aggressive, expanding collective was now the birthplace of millions of new individual consciousnesses. "You could have destroyed them completely," Vess noted. "You had the capability." "We could have," Blackwood acknowledged. "But despite our capacity for violence, humanity's true strength has always been our ability to see potential for change. Even in our enemies, as coalition ships began arriving to witness the aftermath, Wolf turned to Vess. Your people thought humans were simple, underdeveloped allies, good for cultural exchange but little else. Now you know better. Earth stands, ready to defend the coalition, but we hope you understand us more clearly now. Vess nodded slowly. The coalition will never underestimate humanity again. That wasn't our goal, Wolf replied, but understanding each other's true nature, that's the foundation of any lasting alliance. Beyond the viewport, Earth vessels began the process of establishing outposts to monitor the newly individualized Valkyrie. The former collective species would need guidance as they learned concepts foreign to them: choice, individuality, cooperation without compulsion. Defeat was certain, Vess said, echoing the thoughts of countless coalition worlds that had faced annihilation before Earth's intervention, until humanity's most lethal soldiers arrived and showed mercy where none was expected. Wolf's expression softened slightly. That, Commander, is perhaps humanity's most dangerous weapon of all, our capacity to surprise everyone, including ourselves.